Bonsoir, good evening, guten Abend. Welcome to our Beaux-Arts Agora event, Destroy Patriarchy, Not the Planet. My name is Agnès Bertrand. I'm the coordinator of the Belgian feminist NGO Le Monde Selon les Femmes, or The World According to Women. Today, we celebrate the International Day of Women's Rights, which finds its roots in the US and in Europe in the earliest 20th century, but which now resonates and is celebrated around the world. It's more important than ever to talk about women's rights today in Belgium and worldwide. One can sense that it's maybe easier to talk about inequalities, but nonetheless, inequalities between men and women are increasing. Today at this event, and I say we decided together, and I say we, as I mean Beaux-Arts, Le Monde Selon les Femmes, and Oxfam Belgium, to talk about ecofeminism. Why? Because women and girls are disproportionately affected by climate change, the rapid decline of biodiversity, and in a nutshell, the civilization crisis we're facing. Ecofeminism offers ways to apprehend together the environmental crisis and gender equality. It offers openings to rethink the world by putting the living at its heart. It changes the sets of values that preside our societies. We have the ideal panel to discuss this. 5 women whose work focuses on addressing the intersection between the protection of the environment and women's rights. We will have a discussion together, the 5 or 6 of us, for about an hour. And then by 8 o'clock, you will be able, you, the audience behind your screen, you'll be able to ask questions to our panelists. But first of all, I'm going to present the attendance to our panel. So Baliana Aguilar Hernandez, you are from the town of Sinanche in the state of Yucatan, Mexico. You are part of the Sumil Mokhtan collective, so I hope I pronounce it well, where you build a space for collective learning from and for the Mayan people. You are a defender of the territory, which reads much better in Spanish as Defensora de la Tierra. You actively participate in different local spaces, which you gather indigenous women in the care and defense of communal life. So, Baliana, welcome. It's very nice to have you here, like thousands of kilometers away. I'm going to ask you a question with the challenge of answering it in about 2 minutes. I'm sorry, but we're pressed by time. So what does ecofeminism mean to you? Why did you decide to become a community activist and organizer?
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this special space, Nipolal in Maya. And for us as indigenous Mayan women, the integral defense of our territories means the defense of our life as women, that we live in our communities and struggle from there with our bodies rooted in the land. That for us could mean ecofeminist. Maybe we don't have the word in Mayan for this word, ecofeminist, but we have the practices of taking care of life. We decided to organize also ourselves for learning and creating spaces for learned practices of care, especially because we are living in a context of many violence to our territories, especially when companies decided to dispossess our land and impose mega projects that destroy our ways of living. That is why we decided, not only me, but a lot of indigenous women, Mayan women, to become an activist and organizer in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have on my right, Laurie
Yes.
Charles. You're from Belgium, you live and work in Brussels, and you are a visual and textual storyteller. You write and paint speculative narratives on large canvases. This is what your bio says. You also make films in which you interlink folklore, humanities, stories, and historical narratives with a feminist perspective, correct?
Yes.
Alors, I see also, I could read that your work has been exhibited in Brussels, Graz, Hasselt, The Hague, Nanjing, and Paris. So, Laurie, what role do feminism and ecology play in your art, and how do they come together?
Yes. Thank you also. So for me, feminism is not a subject.
Mm-hmm.
So people can work on feminism, but for me, it's the place where I speak from. It's the lenses, and then in my work, I try to rewrite her story of medicine mostly, and trying to link women, health, oppression, and environment together. Ecology came in my work 6 years ago while I was researching on deep ecology and also the beginning of the climate change as we know it today. And then I try to explore the link between health and woman, and it comes from my own body condition, meaning chronic illnesses in relation to the pollution and then the environment. And also I try to examine the work of other women, experiences and voice to enlighten this new sickness that we can call environmental illness. But it comes from the 80s. So it was also popular with the movie in the 90s that is called Safe by Todd Haynes. I will stop here.
Thank you. That's going to be wonderful. It's wonderful to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
And then I'd like to give the floor to Margot Lowers. Welcome, Margot. You're in Perpignan, if I'm correct. Alors, Margot, you hold a PhD in American ecofeminist literature from the University of Perpignan, where you've been teaching translation, English, and American civilization from 2009 until 2018. You have a whole range of publications on the topic of ecofeminism in French and English. You are currently teaching high school English at the Saint-Louis Institution in Perpignan, as well as working in a literary translation. Is that
is
fair
correct?
To you?
Yes, completely. And I've just finished translating two very important ecofeminist works to French. So yeah, I've been studying ecofeminism for the last, 15 years almost. So I'm very happy to be able to join you tonight.
Yeah, I think you're really the right person to have among us tonight. So I've got a question for you. Right now, many women are claiming themselves to be ecofeminists, and among them highly mediatic figures such as Vandana Shiva or Greta Thunberg. Would you say that ecofeminism has taken off?
Well, it's a difficult question actually, because ecofeminism has various origins. It started existing more as a grassroots movement during the 60s, 70s, worldwide actually. And afterwards, university, academia, etc., started showing an interest in writing articles. I don't know if we can say that ecofeminism has actually taken off, because it has existed for the past 40-ish years or so. But it is clear that there is nowadays a new interest, a renewed interest, and that maybe a mindset that prevented ecofeminism from truly speaking to people in France and Belgium and some European countries has changed, and that now people are ready to show a true interest, and interest is clearly growing.
Also, maybe that's also from a Western point of view, and this is why we also have like people from a more southern perspective, which are going to tell us also about this history on ecofeminism, because as Valiana said, I mean, well, the term did not exist or does not exist in the Mayan language, but they would consider themselves as such. So that's why I'm going to present the next person online, which is Gabriela Franco Prieto. Is Gabriela here online? Yes? Gabriela, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Alors, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you, Gabriela. Welcome in Brussels, or we would say, well, welcome in Bogota, maybe, because I understand you're calling us from Bogota.
My colleague?
You are calling from Bogota.
Yes, I'm calling from Bogota. It is a very heated up in the streets right now because it is the 8th of March and it's a lot of protesting going on right now. I was actually stopped by some policemen on my way here. I'm sorry for my lateness.
No problem.
Very happy to be here speaking with you before going to the protest.
Okay. Yeah, so because of course it's the afternoon over there, so you have a protest waiting for you. I can read that you're an ecofeminist activist and founder of the digital project La Totuma on Instagram, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, a space for collective dialogue around climate justice, peace building, and women as political allies of the earth.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Good. Your approach is intersectional, decolonial, from a Latin American and global South perspective. You were also a student at Sciences Po Paris. Now you're back in Bogota, where you're a member of the youth organizations for climate action, Pacto por el Clima, and Fridays for the Future. But you are also an artist, and you use collage in your work. So can you tell us more about this as a way to introduce yourself? Why do you use collage in your activism?
Yes, of course. Well, first, I see that collage is an art form that is very common in many kinds of social mobilization. I've seen it in climate activism, but I've also seen it recently for protests against increasing violence waves in Colombia. So for example, collages that happen not only online, but in the streets and in walls, in murals, it's very accessible. And I like that it mirrors an intention to make a panorama or an ecosystem of different things, right? You're mixing different textures and different pieces from different works. You kind of want to mirror the intention of building collective knowledge, right? Not only one texture, not only one color, but many different textures, many different colors that still promote this kind of unity, right? So this is why I use collage in my work. I would like to think of myself as an artist, but I still think I have a long way to go.
Welcome here. I think your work, which I saw, it was already quite impressive. And last but not least, Joanne Berger, you're from Belgium. You're a freelance journalist for Les Grenades, the RTBF. Mm-hmm. It's a media organization that analyzes the news from a feminist point of view. You have written several articles on ecofeminism, and you are currently writing about women who are campaigning for increased climate action and social justice. So, Jeanne, the question we thought for you, why is it important to offer news from a feminist perspective? I think we need to hear this one.
Yeah. So yeah, Safia Kessas launched Les Grenades 2 years ago. It's the birthday today because it was the 8th of March, 2019. And actually, if you read the media studies, mm-hmm. you will see that amongst the journalists, there are more men, like the majority of journalists in Belgium are men. And the big majority of experts in the media are men also. Mm-hmm. So, as you know, media is also a way to construct or deconstruct stereotypes. Mm-hmm. So it was really important to to create a space to express the voice of women and to analyze news and with a feminist perspective, as you said. Because I don't know if you know Alice Coffin, the French author, probably. Yeah. She said that the principle of neutrality is the subjectivity of the dominant, and so we have to change the view. And so yeah, Les Grenades give women the opportunity to express themselves, and I think it's important, but it's more important than important. It's vital to do that, and it's super essential. And so now with Les Grenades, we produce articles, podcasts, videos. And Safia Kessas just released her book Balance ta grenade, un regard féministe qui découpille la société. And so yeah, we are super happy because Les Grenades is a successful project, but we are also delighted that like what we say mainstream media, in the mainstream media there are more and more feminist subjects and topics, and it's a good stuff. Like the sector is evolving. And so also I would like to point Expertalia, I don't know if you know it. Yeah, it's a platform where you can find woman experts, but also women, not only women, but expert from the diversity. And it's also really important to show, yeah, not only white men in the media. And this is why Les Grenades is an important project, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Yeah, so maybe like unlike ecofeminism, the feminist coverage of the news is really taking off. Then
yeah,
we
actually,
hope so.
Yeah,
we hope so.
Yeah, me too helped like to change, of course, like
totally foster it.
Yeah,
indeed. So thank you to you all. I think we need to start the conversation by explaining to our audience, which is somehow very absent. You see, it's just the weird time we are living through. So we'd like to start the conversation by explaining the fundamental thinking that defines ecofeminism. So the title of this talk is "Destroy Patriarchy, Not the Planet." It's a slogan that we often saw during climate protest during the past years. Can someone explain what are the connections between patriarchy, the climate crisis, and gender inequality? Margot, I would like to hear you on this one.
Well, patriarchy could be defined as a value and a belief system which encourages the idea and the cultural representation according to which women are closer to nature and thus inferior to men. This value system is based on oppositional pairs such as man, woman, culture, nature, public sphere, domestic sphere, etc. We could go on with those examples for a very long time. And it always assigns a greater value to the first element of that pair. And ecofeminism in its theoretical form has started scanning how language, society's functioning, etc., was reproducing this value assignation actually to domestic labor, etc., and has started trying to deconstruct this to show that you can have binary pairs without needing a hierarchy between both, and that it's not because you have differences between pairs that you need to assign a greater value to one of the two. I don't know if I made myself clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'd like to hear your point of view about that, Gabriela, because you're calling, you're an ecofeminist, but you're also really talking about from a very intersectional perspective. What would you add to that?
Well, as Professor Margot already said very well, I think basically it is just any system that in order for it to work favors what is considered masculine and subordinates what is considered feminine. And because nature is considered feminine and obviously women are considered feminine, then it makes it okay for certain man or masculine ways of power to exploit or to damage what is considered feminine. So in a worldwide panorama, what this looks like, this link between gender inequality and the climate crisis, is that first, the climate crisis will affect poor people in the world disproportionately, and 70% of poor people in the world are women. That is just a fact. The climate crisis will create migrants and will create huge exodus because of changes in temperature and rising wave levels. And women and children are more vulnerable to climate migration, are more vulnerable to being traded in as sex slaves. And finally, the climate crisis will threaten food security, especially in global south communities, and this will be put mostly or disproportionately on the shoulders of women because they are seen as domestic individuals, right? In Colombia, in more like a local perspective, I work in Pacto por el Clima, and I'm investigating the relationship between peace building in the post-conflict of Colombia and climate action in Colombia. And we're seeing that a lot of the same barriers that exist for implementing effective policies for both of these things are the same. So Colombia, for example, is the #1 country most dangerous to be an environmental activist, and the #2 country most dangerous to be a woman. And the first one is Mexico, that I think Valiana here knows perfectly what I'm talking about. There are the biggest number of environmental defenders assassinated in 2019 and in 2020, and ever in the history recorded of Global Witness. And for women defending the earth, this is even worse because the threats that they get for their activism are gender specific, right? They are not only threatened with death, but by targeting their community members, their children. They're threatened with sexual abuse. They are threatened with being displaced from their communities. And it's also not registered enough because usually they're considered, the work that they do as activists is not considered activism, it's just considered their role as women and as protectors of their community. So for example, my aunt is an environmental defender in Valle del Cauca, Colombia. She's a farmer for plantain, yuca brava, and coffee. And it's like a small community of farmers. She works in the Junta de Acción Comunal. She has been threatened, yes, by external agents of multinationals that come in and they're threatening the resources, but she's also threatened by the men inside the community that don't like her organizing other women to produce plantain products, for example. So it's like external and internal agents of patriarchy that limit a woman as environmental activists.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And a question, thank you very much. A question for you, Valiana, is what do you observe as a community leader? What do you observe in your work when the feminist and the environmental approach come together? How do they reinforce each other?
Well, here in the community, as Gabriela mentioned, we have been living many difficulties as being women that we live in the communities and defend the land in our communities, because especially now, like a few years ago, we have this mega project trying to dispossess 3,000 hectares from our territory and from companies that are in Spain or have their companies in Spain. And for example, we started to organize ourselves, but it was very hard because even in our own communities, we don't have for example, the access to land as women. Only men have this access to land, and most of the men, for example, in the assemblies, we have to fight against them because they were like the companies, and the people from the companies were giving money to the whole assembly to sign for the permission to dispossess the land. And most of the men, they were agree with that because there were a lot of threats in that history. It was not only because they wanted to sell the land. They offered money, they offered schools, hospitals, streets, for example, parks. And so there was a lot of confusion. But then the women, we started to organize ourselves and to defend the land, but it was hard because we were not the one that have the legal access to the land. So we need to pass through a whole process of how we could claim as in the assembly these our voices also, and to take in the way that we are serious and we know what is going to happen after they dispossess our land. So I think that that was part of how we embody this ecofeminism also, because we didn't know much about what was ecofeminism, right? But we know that we live in this land and we know the importance of cultivating our own food and in the conservation of the forest. This is very important for conserve our life as communities. So in this process, there was a lot of threats against not only as women, but also as a community also. And yes, I think that's the importance of how we could combine these theories of ecofeminism and the support also of many other organizations that are in the city, but also internationally. So how we could weave together, that was very important in that moment, and also for other communities that live the same as us, because we are not an exceptional case. In Mexico, the land and the dispossess of the land and indigenous territories, it's something that happens all the time. So we to learn from that. It was important.
Yeah, thank you. I think that both of you as activists have really shown like the clear connection between the two in your own context. So I'd like to hear more. You, Jehan, you see from the journalistic Belgium context, how do you see, well, those two interests, like the environment, gender equality, how they are intertwined? Actually, maybe, well, the people who are listening to us might not be very acquainted by those concepts and would think that they compete. How do you see those two really coming together?
They are totally linked. So yeah, I would add economy also in the discussion. Yeah, economy, ecology, and feminism are totally linked. And as you said in introduction, like the pandemic shows more than ever the inequalities, and women and girls are more vulnerable. I don't know if you say the number, 40.
No.
47 millions, if I remember well.
Yeah, it's 47 millions of girls and women dragged into poverty, below the poverty line, after the COVID crisis. And, and the figure, if I remember well, is something like 20% lower for men.
Yeah, and so the ecofeminist approach question productivism and the domination of nature, women and the South, and replace the care in the central position, because also during the pandemic, who take care of elderly, who was working in hospital, who was taking care of the kids, women. And so, yeah, women represent 80% of those working in the human health and social work sector. So it's a huge part of the economy. But this essential work is still not recognized. Like, yeah, we clap a bit during the confinement, but that's it. And yeah, I think the ecofeminist approach center the human being. Focus on human being and rebalance the relation with nature and environment. And it's crucial now to rethink the system, because it doesn't work anymore. We see it everywhere, every day. And so, but it's hard to question the system because the system belongs to the dominant. And so, yeah, it's a big deal, but we have to. We don't have choice anymore.
Totally. I understand. It's just also when the few literature I've been reading on the topic really put the issue of care really at the centrality of the thinking, and to rebalance the productive and reproductive work. Absolutely, in the economy.
And also with Les Grenades, it's true that we try to present women as role model. And for example, last week I was I was interviewing une maman solo,
a single mother,
yes, and who is a farmer. We decided to become a farmer, and for her, like an organic farm, and for her to work in the earth on Earth. Yeah, sorry. She's totally independent on every level, like economically independent of man, and it's really empowering, actually.
Okay, interesting experience. Yeah, and Laurie, what do you think? Well, what would be the values or the actions that would be central in an alternative view on women and nature? Well, we were talking about care, but what else do you see? I think that in your work has been very influenced also on health issues and your physical condition, as you say. I would like to hear you more about that. How you conjugate all this.
Yeah, I think ecofeminism is also the relation between woman and environment, but you cannot exclude the question of health. So here I wanted to read an extract from a book called Complaint and Disorder, The Sexual Politics of Sickness. So it's actually wrote by, unnamed to say, Barbara Ehrenreich and and Derde English. I think it's a German name.
It looks like it.
So it's a severe critique of the history of medicine made by male. So the conception of woman as a vulnerable human being is as old as the Eden. In Western ideology, men traditionally represent achievement, power, and health. The woman is a bad-made man, weak and uncompleted. So yes, in my work, I can only speak from my position as an artist. I try to remake this history of medicine. And so I so I exchange the male figure by the woman figure. So I try to shift this men's supremacy by women's supremacy. And then for me, this alternative view of seeing the woman and the nature come with the fiction. And so there I will use the term speculative fabulation that comes from Donna Haraway. So I try to make new world, future worlding, making new stories for the future inside my work. And I try to deconstruct these binaries between like the culture and the nature. So culture means male dominant and the nature. And I try to do this speculative fiction, non-binary speculative fiction, and disanthropomorphize also the way of seeing all the living. So it's it was not short.
Yeah. And I can see like some abstracts of your work have been coming on the screens. The attendees have been able to enjoy, I hope. Yeah, we can see. Yeah. This is part of...
This is an image from the chalet.
Which is it's a video.
Which is a film where 4 girls are trying to explore this going back to nature and mocking the utopia of the history of the utopian communities. And so they are also performing the masculinity through dragging. Because it's a male history also, the first utopic community in America. So it is the 4 girls.
Is there anywhere we can see this video somehow, somewhere?
Then you can go on my website, laurieschorn.net, and then you should write me an email to get the codes, but then you can see the trailers already.
Okay. I'm sure that our
I think I see links with Margot also in the literature and fictional way of exploring this question.
Yeah, I can see Margot is nodding from Perpignan. I'd like to shift now the debate on the topic of building communities and accessing institutions. So to achieve the goals that you have been presented, one needs to act. And in one way or another, each one of you is making a contribution. Valiana, you're a community builder. Your work seems focused on your own community at first sight, but I'm sure somehow you feel part of the bigger movements outside of your own community. How can working with local communities contribute to a global movement, and how do you feel part of it?
Thank you for the question. I think it's very important to say that first, it's for us it has been very difficult also to have these connections between other movements, because sometimes everyone is in their own issue, right? They are fighting, they are struggling, and sometimes the ways to connect are hard. But we are trying also to advance in weaving in a way that it's not organized by, for example, we don't want to be connected as a political party or as a big organization. We want to be weave as we have hammocks, right? We weave hammocks in the community. And when we ask to the community how we want to learn collectively from other collectives that are not in our geographies, they say maybe it's like to weave a hammock, right? An hamaca. It's how we weave this together and collectively, that it has many threads, but they're different colors of threads, but at the same time, we are part of one. And that's how we want to be weave collectively. And yes, we are trying to connect with other struggles and to learn from other practice, from women, from other parts of the world. And we are not connecting as a big organization. It is just like a hammock, right? We learn, we live to be connected and to learn collectively. And now that I see you, I think it would be wonderful if we could be like part of this hammock with Gabriela in Colombia, with Margot in, I don't know where Margot, where you France. Are now. Okay, with Margot, yeah, in France, but with other women that are doing these practices for taking care of life and to build beyond patriarchy and having these practices that goes beyond violence that we are facing.
Yeah. It's interesting. A colleague of mine is talking about a polyphony. You're talking about a hammock. We're talking about a polyphony, actually, where ecofeminism somehow, you see, well, it seems to be a very abstract and theoretical notion, but it takes different forms, you see, and it's rooted in the local, but also in the global. Margot, how did you encounter that in your own work?
Well, at first it was actually quite difficult, in fact, because I started working on my thesis subject, which was how did literature fuel the ecofeminist activist movement in the US? And well, I've had to deal with some bizarre reactions from people that were higher in the hierarchy at university, and a male gaze often that would have bizarre comments like, oh, you're working on ecofeminism, is that why you dress like a witch? Which had absolutely nothing to do with the subject that I was working on. And working on ecofeminism I started in 2009 was actually quite difficult in France, because although one of the most important thinkers is French, Françoise d'Aubonne, who wrote L'Ecofeminisme ou Le Féminisme ou la Mort, well, ecofeminism at that time was completely unknown in France. And so people would go like, you're working on eco what? And so I've spent a lot of time trying to explain, and you're talking about polyphony, and that is a very just word when you're working on ecofeminism, because I don't think that there is one clear definition of what ecofeminism is. There are many forms of ecofeminism, and trying to define it as just one theoretical movement or one activist movement would be reducing the whole thing in a patriarchal way, actually, and trying to put it into a definition which it clearly stands completely above. Because I think that for a lot of us, ecofeminism stems from feeling and from knowing in your guts that something is amiss in the world we're living in and in the way we're living in this world, and that something needs to be changed. And it's true what you said, Laurie, because the way you're defining your own work resonates clearly with the kind of literature that I've been studying to try and make clear how some authors were trying to intermingle and interweave these definitions in their own work to offer new worldviews. And so, yes, well, what is very, very lucky now is that ecofeminism is better known. A lot of people are using ecofeminism as a way to get to activism and to organize actions. Even in France, over the last 2 years, there have been a lot of festivals in Toulouse, in Paris, etc. And the fact that works that were not translated in French up until now are being translated and are being published in this coming year shows that there is a clear interest from the part of the public, and that finally now those ideas in their many forms can be heard and can be brought to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Margot. That I hope very much like that. Many people attending these debates tonight maybe could find them, discover themselves as being ecofeminists as they did not know maybe what you were, because it takes very, very different forms, and then maybe it also provides answers to.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
All the different issues our civilization is right now facing from a gender perspective.
Yes, and I clearly remember when I started working on the thesis that I had this impression that I'd finally found my own place, you know, that I was finally getting answers, like you said, from the ecofeminist movement and from certain theories within ecofeminism, that I finally got this idea with, I'm not alone in feeling what I'm feeling. I'm not alone in wanting to fight the things that I want to fight for. There's others that think like me. And I think that this feeling is extremely important. All the more so now with the pandemic, knowing that other people are feeling the same stuff and trying to find answers and solutions, I think is one of the most important things that we can know.
And so I'd like maybe to move on, because, well, it's all about changes, and to realize that the changes we need for the planet and women. Gabriella, I think your voice is quite important on this one. Do you think the power lies outside or inside the institution or the establishment?
Well, my opinion on this maybe is biased because of the institutions that surround me here in Colombia. I think also in many countries of Latin America, there is a big distrust for institutions. There is a big distrust for the way that...
Here as well.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
No, yes, absolutely. But I say this distrust is also growing here in Western Europe. So I think it can resonate as well, you see, to us. So please.
I think, for example, one institution that at first sight you don't think has to do with the environment or women, but it actually has to do a lot, is the police and military institution. I can speak for Colombia, but I also know that in France, during the pandemic, there was legal policies put into place that would give more power to military and police institutions, that when they commit abuses of power, these are also abuses of power that are gendered. And for example, in the peace process, that has to do a lot with land, when people go to eradicate forcefully the illicit substances like the coca leaf or the marijuana plants, what the peace policy that is being implemented has nothing to do with social and economic stability. It is more putting more military people in the land and forcing campesinos and criminalizing indigenous people and treating them as if they were agents of conflict. And this particularly affects women because they are not treated as subjects of violence, rather as objects of violence, right? So when military people invade these lands, to exert more control, to implement peace and security. There are larger sex trade markets. There are more indexes of gender violence. And women are used as a botín de guerra, which is like a winning from war, like a, I don't know how to say in English.
A prize war.
Oh yes, exactly, a prize war. So ecofeminism, I think, is one of the few political movements or philosophies that can connect so many things into one place. It can explain us, for example, why power within institutions of like the military is inherently patriarchal and is inherently destructive to certain parts of the earth. So I don't think that the answer lies within institutions, because institutions in Colombia have failed us. And many times a woman that wants to get into power goes with the idea that if I am a woman and I get into a position of power, then I will do things that are good for other women. But this isn't necessarily true. Sometimes they will take like the feminist like flag to get into the platform that they are. And once they arrive to this platform, they turn away, because they start trying to appeal to like a more masculine way of power. They start to turn their back on the movements that help them get to where they are. So this is not about the people, it is about the system, it is about the way the institution is built, so that in order for it to work, people that go into this institution have to work with the system. And if the system is patriarchal, and if the system is extractivist, and if the system is colonialist, then, well, people that go into this institution somehow have to get involved with all of that. So I think that there is a lot of power in grassroots movements. I think the initiatives that have inspired me the most, that I have learned from the most, have been from grassroots movements of women defenders of life and earth in all of Colombia, and people in other countries of Latin America that I have also had the opportunity to meet. And these movements are taking a lot more power, I think, even beyond like political parties. These are the movements that are creating change, and I think these are the voices that we need to amplify. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I'd just like to it's very, very interesting to hear that from your point of view, but you know, maybe there is different in shade in maybe with the situation you described from your perspective in Colombia, but the distrust is here as well, and the patriarchy takes a kind of universalist form somehow. So I think it can very much speaks to us what you're telling us about. Even, of course, we understand that it's an environment which is quite difficult. But I'd like to hear you both who are present here in Brussels also about that quickly. Maybe where do you think the power lies, outside or inside the institution? Laurie.
Yes. So me personally, I always work with women. So women in the art and outside the art, curator, artist, graphic designer. So I try to generate this collaboration, and then when we collaborate, we generate more collaboration. So for me, this power, I can only speak for my own position, lies in micropolitics. So for me, like you collaborate on your own, like on your level, and then you make a circular economy. So you can have like public money, but then you reinvest it in collaboration with other women. And then this you multiply the collaboration, and then at some point you can spread this and then go to a higher level. I will give a concrete example, just on again speaking from my own position as an artist living in Brussels. So a friend of me and a good friend of me, Lauren Furter, invited me to collaborate with her while I had no jobs, and then I was struggling, and then she invited me to, I was an outsider in graphic design, she invited me to collaborate in her project, and then we, together, we made these statements that I will quote here. So to experiment space, time, solidarity, care and healing, we get together and mix our graphic design, artistic and feminist practices. So I don't know if I respond to the question, but it's
definitely,
definitely.
You
can, of course, there's the power in institution, but you can still.
You're looking for empowering relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you collaborate with one woman and then you make a community and then you, I don't know, you get some public money, but then you share it with your own community and then you make this circular economy and then you can.
It makes perfectly sense. So it's very much.
Because I will not speak for the global.
No, but it's. I think it's very much parallels actually what we've heard
like
from other. Yeah.
Feminist position. It's of course micro politics. So you speak.
And you, Joanne?
So me, I'm journalist. So I'm super sensible to what you said, Gabriela, because my job is to bring women voices. So it's part of my job, and it's great to meet all these women who are changing the world. And actually, I'm not so pessimist, and I hope it's changing also inside the institution in Belgium. And of course, activists play their role as opinion makers, but and I hope I have the impression that the message can resonate inside the institution, and because yes, women has to be part of the decision inside the institutions and inside committees and leadership position, because we don't need a facade feminism or ecofeminism, but like a structural change. And as a journalist, I think our role is also to show a role model. But I would like to say that in the media we are not. It's not perfect. Also because I don't know, like l'AJP, c'est l'association des journalistes professionnels. So according to the AJP, 4 out of 10 women journalists say they have been morally harassed, compared to 25% of men, and 11% of women have suffered sexual harassment, and 0% of men. So even in the media, we are not perfect at all. And so it's important. Like once again, Les Grenades, it's an inclusive and safe space for women to work actually, and also to bring women voices. So problems are everywhere. This is why we need to stop the patriarchy.
I think that we are reaching now the last section of the debate, and unfortunately I can see that we are a little bit pressed by time, and I know it's not really very much giving justice to a topic like that to talk about that for an hour only. you would agree. Anyway, the last part is about exploring new languages to communicate, and so we understood from your contribution that ecofeminism is urging us to entirely rethink the world we live in. And again, as a dear colleague says, and she will recognize herself, it's not about asking an equal share of the cake, but changing the entire recipe. And to convey this thinking, art is key, because it's the best vehicle to show the fallacies of our world. So I will have one question each, but I really would like you to maybe wrap up your answer in a few minutes. I'm really sorry. I know we are not making justice to the topic, but Laurie, alors, just yeah. How is your art political, and how do you think art can achieve a political goal, which is in this case ecology and feminism?
Yes, so for me, the political way of acting with my art is making more fiction. So there again, I will spoke about my two goddess, Donna Haraway and Isabel Stengers, they said in order to make and remake the world, we need more fiction. And this is what I'm trying to do. I try to speak about all this struggle, ecology, patriarchy, etc. in my work through the speculative fiction. So I had the 2 descriptions of my work, but I don't know if we have time.
Maybe you can give us one.
One or two? Yes, so I made this piece is called The Anger of the Intestine, which is about the geosensology. I don't know if you know what is geosensology. No. It's the study of the senses in connection to geology. So it came from a woman which is still alive. Her name is Charlotte King, and she can predict the earthquakes. So she feels in her body some pain in her body, and then she can say, okay, there will be an earthquake. And she's very known for prediction on the Mont Saint Helene earthquake in the 80s. And then I took her as a character in my fiction, and she became Charlotte Queen, obviously, not Charlotte King. And then, yes, through her character, I could speak about the relation with woman, body, environment, and health. And then I will not say much more, otherwise.
No, sorry, I've got a feeling.
But check the Charlotte King effect. It's very interesting. She has a website, and she speaks about a prediction. Because this body mapping of the body mapping is from the medieval time, actually. It's a very old tradition, but go and check. Check my website.
We will definitely.
To know more about this.
I think it's just like now you have given us enough teaser.
You can see the
we can see
images of the anger of the intestine, because the intestine is situated in the hand.
Yeah.
So in acupuncture you can reach. And then there is a lot of anecdote about animals that also are predictor of earthquake. A lot of symbol behind, an anthropology behind mankind. So animals, all the living together. I will not say more, but
we need to. I think just maybe to give a little teaser to our participants, you're going to have maybe an exhibition in Brussels very soon. You say?
Yes,
you're working on a project
in April.
In April,
and we spoke about body mapping actually.
Okay.
So it will be in Tour et Taxi. In a project called The Temple. And then so it will be the 16th of April.
Okay. I think we will write that down in our agendas. Art is key, and utopia plays also a very important role in ecofeminism. Margot, can you tell us more about that? How did you encounter utopias, I would say with plural, in your work on ecofeminism? Because of course it's a total way to rethink the world, so we need to dream, we need utopias for that.
Yes, of course we do. And utopias, dystopias, fiction, and even some non-fictional romanticized works play an extremely important general role in our capacity of imagining different realities. And in a book, for example, a utopia or a dystopia allows the reader to accept this fictional world as temporary, valid, and true. And this may renew our sense of belonging, our sense of enchantment. And these two are extremely necessary if you want to believe that change is possible. And much more than theoretical writing, art, poetry, and fiction are, to me, in my opinion, what fuels grassroots thinking and what infuses people with the will to effect change. They also recreate a sense of affectivity, which is something which is sometimes lost as regards to nature, for example. And these utopias allow for a space in which empathy is not solely dedicated to the human, but to the animal and the natural environment as well. And the affects, the fact of feeling for these things and these elements is elementary in giving people a reason to fight and try to implement change. Love is the ultimate fuel for activism, because you will not try to protect an environment that you do not love. And literature, especially literature for young adults and children, can help awaken that love for nature, for example, that, well, from my point of view, living in France, kids in cities nowadays are sometimes cut away from. So I really think that being able to give access to those stories and being able to have a space in which those stories are analyzed for what they mean in between the lines is very important, because imagination plays an important role in how we see ourselves in the world and how we protect that world.
Mm-hmm. Talking about, yeah, imagination, I'd like to hear you more about imagery in ecofeminism. One could have the feeling that there is like a common imagery which is used as well, especially if in the West, we can see, well, the image of the witch has been totally rehabilitated. Baliana, perhaps it's not, in your case, the image of the witch, but certainly you use also to gather people a common imagery. And since also you work for and from the Mayan community, can you tell us more about also the image, the common narratives that you use? Maybe it's through music, I don't know. It's just, we would like to hear you more about that.
Thank you. I think for us, for the Mayan communities, what it has been very important in it's our cosmovision, or the way that we see and we feel the world. And this world for us is also complementary in the way that we are complementary with nature, also with the beings that we cannot see, that are in the forest, that are in the winds, for example, in the water, in the cenotes, that it's caves inside the ground with water, and we see these figures there, and we see ourselves in community in that ceremonies, for example, to ask permission to go to cultivate, for example. But also what it's more important, it's how we do this practice in our own ways of living. For example, or who we are as Mayan people is based in maize, in the milpa. That there are seeds, but it's also based in bees, in native bees, because we are keepers of the bees also that are with us. And we have this knowledge for thousands of years, and now the women are reclaiming that knowledge, and we are taking back or the defense of the land. It is not only in the legal terms, it is also to be in the territory, to be in the lands, to be in the soil, and coming back to the soil as youth also, because many youth are impacted by the violence of colonialism, racism. So they are they need to face to leave the communities and live the life in the cities. So what we are trying to do in our own cosmovision, for saying in one way, but it's our way to live and feel the nature. It's to reclaim that, in order to coming back to the soil, to coming back to the land, to defend the land, and not only as women, it is as a community, right? In the community, there are many intergenerational threads that we need to weave together and to learn and to fight. And of course, for example, we don't have these images of witches, but we have the images of winds. And what it's important to say is that the winds doesn't have a gender, right? In our language, we don't have gender in that way. As the Christianism or Catholicism that have gods, or that are men, right? They don't have any genders. But maize, for example, for us it means ishim. And ishim in Spanish, for saying in one way, or in English, now I'm going to say, it means the breast of a woman. And because that is our first food, and that it's or the principle of our life as Mayan people, the seeds and the soil and what we eat and how we build our houses and how we are connected to the land.
Thank you very much. And Gabriela, you in terms of imagery, you using the symbol of la totuma. Just before I read about you, I had no idea what that was. Can you explain us and the participants what la totuma and why you use this symbol?
Yes, of course. I think in Mexico, Baleana, they're called jicaras. And in other parts of Latin America, they're called different things, but in the northern part of South America, it's called totuma. In English, in I think Jamaica, it's called a calabash. And so what it is the fruit of the tree totumo that has like a very huge green fruit that when it dries out and it becomes hollow. So it's like a very hardened ball. And the reason I use this as a symbol is because it permeates different aspects of life that have to do with care. And it is traditional to use them, especially like in small towns or rural areas. And I have really nice memories with my families that are not from Bogota, growing up and having the totuma like as a symbol in different parts of life. So for example, you can use it to shower. So like you pick up the water and you can shower with it. It is also used to share food and drink. In celebrations, you pass it around because it's not a stable bowl. It's always has to be coming from hand to hand. And it has a lot this spirit of sharing, of picking up and putting down, of caring for other people and for caring for yourself. And also because, well, it actually, when I was born, my partera, like the woman who helped my mother give birth, showered me with a totuma. So it's been like all over my life, but it's also like a form of resistance because when well, the colonization is a constant process, right? But during the actual event of colonization, totumas were associated to indigenous people and to campesino people, and they were associated to chicha, which is a kind of corn alcohol, and they were criminalized because they were seen as associated to like the non-Spanish, non-white, like Western form of celebration. So the fact that they still exist today and all these aspects of life is a form of resistance. And the reason that I use this symbol is because for me, it symbolizes, it can be a tool, it can be used to make art, it can be used to share, to store things, to shower your children, to shower yourself. So for me, this symbol is like a very communal, collective symbol. And the reason I use it combined with some banana leaves and like the fist of a woman is that like from this collective sharing comes the strength of woman and nature as well, not nature, but the environment as political allies, as comadres. So very intimate friends or very intimate political allies.
A very, very powerful symbol. Thank you. Thank you. Jeanne, you're working as a journalist.
For les grenades, which is also a fruit.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about that when you was.
Absolutely.
It's a what is the
pomegranate?
Pomegranate, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I'm listening your question.
No, it's interesting because I never thought about myself why les grenades is called les grenades. So maybe you have an answer.
I'm very bad in symbolic, but I could send you a mail tomorrow and.
Yes.
But yeah, there is la grenade. It's an important symbol.
Yeah,
but I will not speak about that because I'm afraid to.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe Safia could answer us better on this one because maybe the weapon, la grenade.
We can add that tomorrow by mail. It will be better.
And so you're working as a journalist. We know on ecofeminism as well. You've been doing some reportage, writings on ecofeminism. How do you convey, I mean, the thinking, the actions on ecofeminism to a mainstream audience?
Yeah. First, I would like to say I'm super interested by all your testimonies because I'm a journalist, but I'm also a person, and I'm following like a storytelling formation of 3 years. So like I'm super interested by also stories and how to share stories, and also the voice, like from like ancestral voices. And so, but yeah, in my work is also to write stories. And so to answer your question, I think if you tell stories of strong and free and inspiring women, you can change mentalities. And
the models.
Sorry?
The models, as you were talking at the beginning.
That's really like and sometimes, like, yeah, I wrote some more like theoretical articles about ecofeminism, but yeah, I think so there is like that kind of articles, but also like more role models articles, and especially like because we spoke tonight about nature. And yes, with this pandemic, if you live in the middle of the city in a little apartment, you really miss the nature. And also we realized, I think a lot of people realized how much we need the nature, and how much, and so it's also like right now I'm meeting a lot of women who live in the nature, and also to ask them questions about their relationship with nature, because it's true, Margot, what you said about young people, but who are not connected so well. I was watching a video where like kids could not say anything, just trees, and it's tree, but and
which tree?
Yeah, which trees and what are you eating, and it's not only vegetables, what kind of vegetables. And so it's really important to write stories, to share stories, and about people who do stuff.
Which will add to this polyphony or amok that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I really like also this image of polyphony, and yeah, it's great. I mean, it's what I really like in my job, is to meet people, to hear their stories, and after to share it to the public and to the audience. And if they want to go further, they can go to the library and have a book and understand. Yeah, it's really, I really like it. And thanks. Actually, I hate the Zoom stuff, but it was great to have you, because no, it's nice because you are really, really far and we can have a discussion together.
Yeah,
and
but
so, I like Zoom today because no, it was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, before we take some questions, we could I'd like to ask you one question where you have to answer challenge again with one phrase. So if you were a witch, and I say that in the Western culture, like the witch has been very much rehabilitated. If you were a witch, which spell would you cast? So I'm going to ask Laurie on my right first.
Okay, one sentence.
Yeah.
Me, I will give the gift of geosensitivity to everyone, so we can all have a little chat with nature.
That's nice. I would take it. Valiana?
Because we are doing this now and with other women, the gift of healing with plants.
I like this one very much too. And Margot?
Well, the first idea that I might have like that is that maybe, because I was trying to find something really concrete, I don't know, and it's much less poetic than what you both said, but maybe I would render money useless. So that we would have to go back. We would have no choice but to have to go back to a totally different system of value, actually. But then again, there are so many things that I would want to change with one spell. So it's a difficult question.
Gabriela.
Well, for me, I think the most close thing to a witch's spell that I could know, that I can derive power from it, is a chant that we say at the marches, and that I will probably say until my throat burns today. And I think that they also say it in Mexico, and it is Mujeres contra la guerra, mujeres contra el capital, mujeres contra el racismo, contra el terrorismo neoliberal, and it means women against war, women against capital, women against racism, and neoliberal extractivism or terrorism.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily, like, I think the gift would be of community with other women, and of the power that you can derive from having that community, and how powerful we are together. So
yeah.
that's my spell.
That's a nice one, and I can sense also. I would add to Jeanne as well, in the sense that, well, you're far away, and maybe that's one of the beauty of, the positive side of the pandemic we are living through is that, well, we are talking to you. You're very far away, and we can sense a little bit of we can sense this spirit of community, Gabriela, and also Valiana, very much, and Margot. But Margot, you're not that far away, I would say. It's a few hours by train. Jeanne?
Me too. I was thinking about something practical, and I was like, reduce energy. And after I was, okay, like one thing will be to reconnect people to their emotion and to their inner drive. And maybe I'm too naive, but I think if people really, really were connected to their emotion, they would, maybe it's too pink, but they will be more, they will act for more justice on every level.
Absolutely. Certainly. It's not like seeing La Vie en Rose to say that. I think we could make a big difference. I'm just seeing that if with question times, and I think we have maybe 10 minutes right now to take 5 minutes. I see. No, even not 3 questions.
No, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Sorry. And the first questions that we have from the audience, and unfortunately, no, it's not really the question time where we can see people raise their hands and so on. It's much more dematerialized, as you can see. I've got this one from, how could ecofeminism with collective intelligence tools challenge patriarchal governance models more effectively? I think we are here, like, it's in between, like, progress and utopias there. Margot, how would you, you want me to read this one again?
No, I'm looking at it actually. How could
yeah, you have it too.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
As well.
That's great.
Well, I think that the question states more effectively, and I would disagree actually, because I think that the activism that ecofeminism has given birth to is effective and has challenged patriarchal governance quite effectively. I just think that there has been from certain types of media and male possessed media and patriarchal thinking media, there has been a whole work of trying to how would you say that, of trying to limit ecofeminism's importance. Like you were talking about figure of the witch, and for a very long time ecofeminism has been equated with a religion of witches, and in French they would call it une religion sorcière, and it was a way of stating that it wasn't valid. And I think that's one of the reasons why the figure of the witch has been used by activists themselves to reclaim their own power. So I think that ecofeminism is quite effectively challenging patriarchal governance models with collective intelligent tools, by the stories they create, by the way they help people to create communities and to learn different ways of listening to each other.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I got this one, which is also a reaction to Gabriela's comment about power. Remember, power lying within or outside of the system. Where can we change things from within or from outside? How can we, Gabriela, I'm going to, maybe it's a comment to your comment, so you're going to have the floor, but others can react, of course. Huh? How can we change things collectively without using the system? isn't power the problem, but also part of the solution? This is very philosophical, but we have all been concerned by social justice. We've all asking ourselves this kind of question. Gabriela.
Okay, thank you for the person who asked this question. I don't know the name. Yes, it's a very philosophical question. I think it's impossible to act outside of the system. It's almost impossible to act outside of the system because the system is co-constituted with many different things. The patriarchal system acts hand in hand with white supremacy, acts hand in hand with colonialism, with capitalism, there's all these systems that are acting together. So even if you do your best not to participate in one of them, you're participating in all of them, and you can't blame people for participating in a system that they did not choose to exist in. So I think, well, just like first establishing that there's no way that we can't work with the system. We have to work with the system because it's inevitable that we are well within it. But I think when you say, isn't power part of the problem, but also part of the solution, I think the issue here is that we have to rethink power, right? Because if the same way that we think about power right now is part of the solution, then it's not going to be a solution. We're just going to be replacing people that are using masculine ways of power, or replacing systems that are using masculine ways of power with people within the systems, but that they are also using these masculine ways of power, even if they're a woman, even if they're like a Black or indigenous or campesino. So like by changing the system, I don't mean just working completely outside of it, but not believing that it's only about representation. It's about much more than representation. It's about changing our many things in our world. This is very overwhelming to think about because you kind of feel powerless facing all of these dynamics that are affecting you. I think one phrase that really helps me, that was taught to me by one of the people that I love most in the world, is act and hope will come. So when you feel very hopeless and you start acting and you start meeting with people, you start meeting with extraordinary women like the ones that are here today, then this is where hope comes, and this is where you start to see possible utopias.
Valiana, would you like to add something to this question or comments? How can we change things collectively without using the system? Isn't power the problem, but also part of the solution?
I'm so glad by Gabriela's answer also. It was very interesting. Because we are in the same, like we cannot escape from the system, because the system is in many levels inserting in our communities, in our life too. And what we are saying here also with other collectivos and organizations and communities is how we could make unnecessary those systems in our life and in every aspect of our life that it's insert. For example, in eating, how we could like organize ourselves and not depend on the food system that it's seeking us, or the health system that it's seeking us and killing us, especially in this conjuncture of COVID. We see how in Mexico, for example, if you go to the health system, you could die. And I think that happens in America Latina also, in Abya Yala, right? And what we see is how we could reclaim our ancestral, vernacular, communitarian ways of life and make unnecessary those patriarchal systems that are inserting in our life, in our practices also, and how we could weave with others these other ways of living too, and learn collectively of how we could disentangle ourselves from the patriarchal and capitalist system in order to create other ways of living that we have, that we know how to live without money as indigenous communities. We know how to live without a food system, a health system, because we have been doing this during thousands of years, and we know how to do it. We just need that our practice could be in that way also, because because we cannot romanticize indigenous communities and say that they don't have these systems, these patriarchal capitalist systems, but we are fighting against that all the time. But make it unnecessary, that system. If we don't have political parties, we have our decision making through assemblies. If we don't have a food system, we organize ourselves in community to cultivate our food. And yeah, these kind of things that we are trying to do over here also.
Thank you. I'd like to jump to the next question, because you were talking about the pandemic, and it's a question that, well, I think many of us have been asking ourselves. Do you think the dramatic pandemic could be turned into an opportunity to rebuild the world, I guess, from an economist perspective, ecofeminist perspective? You've been talking about the pandemic, so of course my my glance turns towards you.
Yeah, to be honest, I hoped during months, and I truly believed during months that we were facing a real change. But I have been very positive during this debate, but I'm not sure it's gonna happen right now. And I hoped it would be faster. But during the pandemic, I was really active in the solidarity, not with my casket of journalist, but as a citizen, and a lot of journalists spoke with us, and we had a lot of interviews also with politics, and I truly believed at that time that something was changing. And now it's 1 year, and I don't know. I think it will change because we doesn't have choice, but I don't know when. And as an observer, because when you are a journalist, you observe. I'm not sure we are going in the good direction, and I'm quite afraid, actually.
It's worse.
Sorry?
Worse than before. It's too big to be changed. I mean, there is the same as I said. This micro organization that are tackling this, but the big system is like becoming bigger, more richer, poor, more poor. I mean, we need a bit.
Yeah. What they are waiting for? Like, what we had a pandemic was directly linked to the ecological crisis. So what are they waiting for?
Now there's a very nice. No, no, because we're very much still in the middle of it, as we can experience today. So that's right. But there is this question which I find quite interesting, which reads: how distressing do you find living in this patriarchal society? Do you lay awake at night thinking about it? Or are you confident that we'll eventually be able to change the system? So it's to anyone who wants to answer the question, but I'm going to ask you, Laurie, if you have
if I don't sleep at night because...
No. Do you have any hopes, or do you have any hopes that it will change, or do you see it's a cause for anxiety? I'm not sure about that, but where are your hopes right now?
I don't know. I don't know what to answer, but I'm not very negative about that. More fiction. More fiction. That would be my.
I think we need more fictions and more
because
imaginary.
of science fiction, it's what they say. Science fiction that were wrote in the 80s or even before are now happening. Even this pandemic, it's current. It's science fiction books. So now we need more to think about other future. But I'm not. No, I'm not negative. There's still hope. There's still people to meet, so we can still meet people even during the pandemic.
Yeah. Does anyone wants to try to answer this question here?
Yeah,
I would love to, if
Laurie,
if you
please.
don't mind.
Margot, sorry.
Because I don't lie awake at night. I get very angry from time to time about the patriarchal system, but I don't lie awake from it at night. However, I've been teaching this year with young adults. They're like 13, 14. And we were working we were organizing, I was trying to organize a debate on gender equality, because I'm teaching English, and so I was working on that with them on vocabulary and stuff and organizing a debate in English. And I asked some of the class to be against gender equality in the debate. And they were completely at a loss of finding arguments that were going against gender equality. And it was such a lovely feeling to see this young generation of new to be soon adults in a couple of years who think that it is completely crazy to think that a woman is inferior to a man within this society. And I just told them, thanks. You're renewing my faith in what the world will be in a couple of years, because once you'll be the adults and you'll be at the heads of companies and stuff, and you'll be making laws. And if now already you think that there is no reason to see differences in treatment and that there should exist equality, and you have no arguments against that equality, that means that one day the world will be a better place.
And just maybe to finish, because we need to wrap it up right now, but I like to hear you, Baliana and Gabriela, about where are your hopes yourself?
Well, I think our hopes is still in the community, still here with indigenous women, and also in the struggle. I mean, in our community, we don't have cases of COVID because we're still doing our life, and we don't have any death by COVID, and we're still doing like going around during the pandemic. We don't have lockdown here in our communities. Coming back, we don't want to come back to the normality, because the normality was already awful, full of violence. We want to come back to our lands, to the soil, to community, to the defense of that. It's who we are, a communal being. And I think.
But what brings you hope about the fact that things will be changing? Where can you see the hopes? Where are your hopes in the fact that things are changing in the right direction?
Oh, now we see that many people, for example, are coming back to an economy that it's not based in the dispossession or extractivism. For example, we are coming back to our own exchange without money, for example, to do that in the community. But we see many dangers now, because we see that the activation of economy now, the governments are announcing several mega projects to implement in the territories. And we see that as a threat, because we are not able to gather in all together. And we need to protect our elders too, right? Because they, in many cases, in other communities, the elders are dying because of COVID. For example, in Brazil, we see many cases of that. And I think that the hope is how we could organize ourselves in the face of this new normality, that we could fight against this patriarchal system, the extractivism, the colonialism, but in a very organized way, that in this pandemic also, that it's very hard to gather and have assemblies and have agreements on what is happening, but that it's the hope that we see, that how we could organize ourselves in this new stage of the pandemic.
And thank you. And you, Gabriela, you the privileged one to have the last word. where do you your own hopes are lying? Yeah, where do you find your hopes?
Well, it's a very hard question. Sometimes you can get overburdened by just like the realities of things, and by also being in the activism sphere, you have to constantly be reading stories and designing things that, well, they're very painful to know about, to know that this is happening around you and this is nothing you can do. My hope right now is in knowing that there are so many more people that care than I think, than I thought. So for example, today is the 8th of March, and I was organizing an ecofeminist coalition to march today. And I opened the convocatory in my page, and I felt like a few people would come. And now I'm organizing a group of like 8 people. We are planting a garden in the central park of Bogota in the memory of defenders of earth that were killed, women defenders of earth and life that were killed. We are doing a performance piece asking for the Escazú Accords to be signed. There are women from many different kinds of organizations, of collectives of cyclists, of urban and rural agriculturers, of other activists. And sometimes in activism, you feel like, why doesn't anybody care? And there are so many people that have the will and the resources and the interest and the curiosity. And however many people that you think that they are, you have to like double, triple this number. And it's always it always fills me very much with hope to find these extraordinary people that we're willing to work hand in hand, like Valiana says, to weave things together, to weave, yes, to weave. So yeah, I think a very good advice is, if you're interested in a cause, especially in gender equality or defending the earth, ask for a community or do an initiative to build this community, because there are so many more people that you think that would be interested. And it's very powerful, the amount of things that you can do with a group of people that have initiative. So those are my last words for this conference.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And it very much echoes as well, like what you were telling Laurie earlier about finding the empowering relationship, actually, and moving on and reaching to get all and bringing ourselves hope and reaching for the change.
Yeah, and I think the next, because I was a bit too pessimistic, but because I took the change will be more direct and more strong. But yeah, of course, I'm full also for the future, because if not, I would not be there. But I think, as Margot said, the next generation, I think, I put a lot of hope in their hands, actually. And yeah, I think they are different.
Yeah, definitely.
We saw them in the streets during months.
And we saw them in the streets today, despite our restrictions. Definitely, indeed. Unfortunately, I think we need to end this talk, and it's very much of a pity, because there was like it was nice to meet you, and it was nice to meet you behind the screen. The audience was totally invisible, but I hope very much, ladies and gentlemen, that you had a good time, that maybe you discover yourself as an ecofeminist, because you're also asking yourself the same questions as we do, as our panelists do tonight. And there are a few words, that I would remember from this talk. It's about this empowering care, as well as this polyphony. I think wherever we are in the world, we can sense as well the same things, and where the problems lie, and maybe trying to build up collectively the answers. I wish, well, you the audience, you will be here also to clap our participants tonight. I asked if it was possible, to open up the mics of all the participants, but apparently no way. So maybe, we can give you a little round of applause, and we can applaud each other, just to have the... the impression that we're together. So thank you very much. Thank you Oxfam. Thank you Le Monde Selon les Femmes, and of course thank you Beaux-Arts and the technical team here. Thank you very much. Have a very good
much.
evening. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
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 Bye bye.
Gracias.
Gracias. Adiós. Adiós.